Have you ever spent hours reading a difficult text, highlighting key sentences, and neatly organizing the main ideas into your digital notes? Then a week later, you can't explain the core concept to someone else. Or maybe you have tried popular speed reading apps to accelerate your learning. Then you reach the end of the page and realize your eyes were moving, but your mind never processed the ideas. You are reading, you are taking notes and following every study techniques experts recommended, yet your ability to solve complex problems is not growing. The uncomfortable truth is that your strategies are not failing because you lack intelligence. They are failing because they are like painkillers for a chronic disease. They temporarily make you feel as though you are learning, but they never treat the underlying cause. I call these cognitive painkillers. Think about someone who relies on medication to keep their cholesterol numbers under control. The blood test may look better while taking the drug, but if the underlying lifestyle and metabolic problems remain unchanged, the disease process itself has not been fully addressed. The numbers improve, yet the factors driving the problem continue to exist. Many popular study strategies work the same way. They improve the appearance of learning. You finish chapters, fill notebooks, and feel productive, but they don't strengthen the cognitive processes that produce deep understanding. That's why I call them cognitive painkillers. They make learning feel better without addressing the root cause of the problem. To understand why, we have to look at the biology of learning. Evolution designed your brain to be a metabolic miser. It is systematically hardwired to conserve glucose and oxygen. Your brain evolved to prioritize energy conservation. Whenever it can recognize instead of reason, it will always choose recognition. This is where your brain architecture comes into play. The posterior region at the back of your brain are absolutely essential. They handle perception, comprehension, and the initial storage of sensory representations. They allow you to recognize words on a page, but real learning, schema building, and complex problem solving require you to recruit the prefrontal cortex. This is at the front of your brain. The prefrontal cortex is where you manipulate, integrate those representations into your existing web of knowledge. The danger of popular cognitive painkillers is not that they engage the posterior region, it's that they never push learning beyond it. They allow the metabolic miser to take the path of least resistance, bypassing the prefrontal cortex entirely. Let's expose the three most common cognitive painkillers and how they are secretly destroying your ability to think deeply. The first cognitive painkiller is reading with the sole intention to extract ideas from a text. Most of us don't read to gain deeper knowledge. We read to collect information. We read to extract facts, copy paste summaries, and file them away. We believe the problem is that we don't have enough information, so we collect more and more data. The cognitive painkiller is the act of collecting the data. Imagine someone with 25,000 perfectly organized digital notes who still struggle to explain a single concept without looking at his screen. When you simply extract information to retain it raw in memory, it stays locked into the posterior region of the brain as an isolated asset. It will never properly connect with your existing knowledge structures, that is your schema. The next time you finish reading a chapter, close the book and try to explain the mechanism aloud. Can you do it without looking? If not, your posterior brain did the heavy lifting of recognition, but your prefrontal cortex never processed that knowledge. You haven't built a framework, you have just built a digital junkyard. The second cognitive painkiller is prioritizing reading speed over knowledge processing. We treat the number of books we read each year like a badge of honor. We skim, we rush, because we think reading faster is the solution to not having enough time. But here is the problem. Reading is not the goal. Neural restructuring must be the goal. Imagine reading 10 pages in 5 minutes. You feel productive because you have covered a lot of material. But now someone asks you to explain a question. Why did the author make this argument? Suddenly you find yourself reopening the book because you can't explain the underlying logic. What happened? Your eyes processed the words, but your prefrontal cortex never had enough time to manipulate the ideas, connect them to your existing knowledge, or build a new mental structures. You increased your reading speed, but your understanding never caught up. Deep learning requires cognitive friction. When you force your brain to read fast, you give priority to visual processing at the absolute expense of conceptual synthesis. Speed reading completely prevents you from doing the one thing that builds intelligence, that is, thinking while reading. Thinking while reading means slowing down to ask why the author made that particular claim. It means pausing to predict the next logical step before turning the page. This intense mental heavy lifting forces the prefrontal cortex to hold ideas in working memory, break down old schemas, and physically restructuring your mental neural pathways. If you speed read, you are treating reading like a logistic problem instead of a biological transformation. The third cognitive painkiller is prioritizing the storing of raw information or aiming for a photographic memory. Many learners believe that ultimate goal of studying is to build an unshakable verbatim archive of facts. So they devote most of their effort to rote memorization and memorizing disconnected facts, believing that remembering more automatically leads to deeper understanding. But a camera has a perfect photographic memory of the pictures it takes, yet it does not understand a single one of them. True intellectual growth doesn't come from pixel perfect storage in your posterior sensory areas. It comes from abstraction and synthesis. Deep learning requires you to strip away the surface level wording of a text, finding the underlying structural principle, and state it in your own messy words. If you can only repeat a concept using the exact phrase the textbook used, you don't own that knowledge, you are just hosting it. So, how do we end this biological tug of war? How do we stop treating symptoms and finally fix our cognitive metabolism? The turning point is conscious identification. The moment you sit down to study and recognize that your strategy is just a cognitive painkiller, you stop letting your metabolic miser brain make the decisions. Instead of taking the easy path, you begin engaging the prefrontal cortex. Instead of extracting data, you will begin to practice schema integration. You will pause after a major point and ask, how does this idea conflict with or expand what I already know? Instead of speed reading, embrace elaborative interrogation. Intentionally slow down, force yourself to explain the underlying logic and create friction. Instead of rote storage, practice active reconstruction. Close the book entirely. Force your prefrontal cortex to drag the idea out of the darkness and rebuild it using a unique analogy from a completely different field. Your brain was never designed to become smarter by avoiding effort. It becomes smarter because of effort. Every single moment of cognitive friction is a biological signal that your prefrontal cortex is building something completely new. Don't run away from that discomfort. That discomfort is what intelligence feels like. Consciously call out the painkillers, activate your prefrontal cortex, lean into the friction, and start learning deeply. Thank you.